Like the valley is starting to feel like the IE.
Yeah, I can't do it.
It's a lot. It's a lot. All right. We are live in this thing. See if I can catch it before we get the feedback. And go good.
Oh yeah! You know what it is. Yo, this is not a trip down memory lane. Here's a little story, now let me explain. It's more of an antidote, mixed with a lot of hope. This could be a lot of folks, single parent, dead broke. Spend a lot of time alone, making beats on the phone. Daddy ain't coming home, mama trying to stay strong. But her patience is running thin, getting sick and tired of all the trouble he's in. Fussing and fighting, it's hard to make friends, and she just gotta call, he's in the office again. One more time and they might suspend. Screaming, teacher, teacher, give him one more chance. Losing all faith like he just can't win. His back's to the wall cause he following trends. Afraid to seem weak so we gotta pretend. Life out of control, can't see no end. He needs safe space, someone to relate, help him to be great. She needs safe space, someone to reward, never to ignore. They need safe space, someone to respect, open intellect. We need safe space, got to regulate, try to balance the way. We need safe space. I need safe space. I need safe space. Safe space.
All right. Welcome everybody into the safe space. It's great to be back. And it's been a couple of weeks since we've been in this thing. We got the full cast in here. It's gonna be a very good night. I'll just introduce myself. If you don't know, I'm J. Vincent B. Also known by my government name, Jared Baisley. I'm the Chief Operations Officer and also one of the many hosts of this podcast, Safe Space, where we create safe spaces where we can talk about things that are mental health related and everything under the sun. We're joined by our clinical director, Stevie McBride. We got our clinical director, Sean Patrick Lewis. We have our CEO, Haskell Jackson. And we also have our CBO, Alicia Cherie, along with our CFO, Sean McBride. And we're joined by a very, very, very special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the amazing Jasymnn Abernathy, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Thank you.
So,
welcome.
Oh yeah. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. Jasymnn, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I had a long day of sessions with couples, mostly.
Okay.
Couple individuals. So this will be refreshing, a good way to wrap up the evening.
Yeah, like that. Well, we'll start off pretty chill, and we'll ease our way into the heavy topic. So what we like to do first is just check in. So we want to know what your highs of the week were, your lows, if you had any, and what you've been doing for self-care this past week.
So I'll start with self-care because it's also a high. It's just like getting, my hair done, getting my nails done, something that I have to find the time or make the time, I should say, especially having a little one these days. So coordinating with my husband's schedule and all. So I guess that's a victory always, to coordinate and to be on one accord because it can get kind of hectic with little ones. Also my kiddo, he started not preschool, but daycare. He's only a toddler. He's almost 2, but he's adjusting well to that. So that makes my heart happy. And just watching him learn and experience some cool stuff at school has been good. Lows, not too much of lows this week. I think just being tired, trying to juggle things. It's an ongoing challenge with that sometimes, especially with the little one, and I'm also expecting one. So there's just a lot of there's a lot of moving parts. Thank you.
We love kiddo.
Family's growing, and mentally, it's just already anticipating adjustments and things. So not so much of a low, but just adjusting.
Love it.
That's awesome though. Yeah, I saw the announcement. Another baby boy.
Team boy here. It's gonna be fun and kind of crazy, I think. I grew up with a couple little brothers. My mom had 2 more when I was in high school and beginning of college, and it was just a lot of fun, but it's a lot different when you're responsible for them. So, I like it.
Only imagine.
Yeah.
You got the girl dads in here.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So I can't even imagine having some young men running around. I know I was crazy when I was a child, so
very different dynamics, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, so since we're here in this podcast brought to you by the good people of Music for Your Mental Health, I have to ask you what your experience has been like with music and mental health, personally, and whether or not you use music in your practice.
Yeah, I would say I'll start with professionally, because I don't use it as much professionally. Like, I think it comes up more, or would come up more when I had teens and worked with children. I would incorporate that to get a sense of, how they're experiencing or processing different events that are happening in their lives. So that was definitely more so before I was working with adults and more along the relational side of things. Here and there, I'll get some younger folks like talk about a song that really resonates with them or things like that, but not so much professionally. I would say personally, music has always been one of my favorite things. I don't play an instrument now. I say now because, like, in elementary, I played the recorder. Like everybody else.
Hey.
But
that counts.
Yeah, it's true. It does. But if I was to choose an instrument, I've actually been thinking about taking lessons. I would do piano. So I just really love music. I think it probably started before. It was probably started when I was in the womb. There are just certain songs that I'll hear from like early 90s, and I'm like, why do I love this song? And I'm like, I'll text my mom like, did you used to listen to this song? Because this song is on repeat for me, and I know it's before my time. And she's like, yeah, me and your dad used to listen to that song. And so music for me is a lot of joy. 90s R&B is my absolute favorite genre. Before, when I would have relationship issues like throughout high school and college, it would be those love songs that I would listen to soothe and find connection with through the lyrics. And now it's more, I'll listen to like gospel worship music, really resonating with my spirit. Jazz music, some good lullabies for my son. I play at nighttime, and it's like soothing for me. Even I find myself falling asleep. So I just really love music. For me overall, I would say is very much a self-soothe instrument for myself.
Well, you're in good company.
Yeah, I know.
We at Music for Your Mental Health love music, and it's very soothing for us. So we love that. Yeah. So let's dive in. This is a continuation episode of of a discussion we were having about the impact that Black women have on Black men and their mental health. And I remember you were in the chat, and I definitely wanted you to hop in and really we wanted to hear what you had to say. And so now we finally have the opportunity to hear from you. And so we're super excited. And so I kind of wanted to just pick up where we left off and give you a chance to really set the tone. And before we do that, I feel like we need to actually introduce who you are and what you do for the people who don't know before we dive in. So please let the people know who you are.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm Jasymnn Abernathy. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I own a practice a solo practice, mental health therapy, where I focus on relationships, relationship healing, wellness, thriving. I work a lot with people who've had relational traumas from, parental relationships, dating relationships, even within friendships. I focus on emotion regulation, conflict management when I'm working with couples, connection with couples, and also communication strategies. So how to, just enrich their relationship while cleaning up what's not working. And then also with individuals, I work with burnout, and I mentioned the trauma aspect as well. So I really enjoy what I do. I know there are a lot of clinicians, maybe not a lot, but some clinicians that, couples are challenging, but I feel invigorated when I work with couples. I really enjoy, I'm just really passionate about relationships and healthy healing relationships. So that's something that I do on a day-to-day basis besides being a mom and a wife. So, yeah.
Wearing many hats.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. So yeah, getting back into the discussion, you said something that I kind of wanted you to unpack a little bit. During our discussion, you said that Black men and women need to work on validating one another because we have been chronically invalidated by society. So I feel like we need to unpack that first before we get the next part of the question. So please elaborate on what you meant by that, where you were coming from.
Yeah, so validation, I'll just say what it is acknowledgement of someone's experience, acknowledgement of the kernel of truth in one's experience, whether it's, how they just process things, a lot of emotional experience, how they think about things. And so it's all about understanding their context. And when I think about society at large having been historically invalidating towards Black folks, I'm thinking about in so many different arenas and, the workplace and just the community. And that all filters in, it trickles into the home, and with that great influence from the outside, sometimes coming inside and like causing us, I think, to turn against each other when we think about like what societal expectations are, what society's criticisms are, and like turning, toward one another and sharing those same things. And so, if you think about like Black folks' experience being questioned or denied or silenced, those are all invalidating factors. And so because of that experience, we've got to be extra vigilant and intentional with building each other up. And so not just affirming, but validating our experiences, wherever that could take place, whether it's at work or in the community or with friends even. So I think that's where my mind was with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you kind of touched on it. The second part of the question is, how do we begin to validate each other?
Yeah, I think I think a lot starts with introspection. Like when I'm working solo with folks or with couples, I'm trying to get them to see themselves first. Like, what are your negative thoughts, negative interpretations, your judgments about other people or yourself? Like taking the time to self-reflect because when we do that, we can better recognize what our internal dialogue is or what our reactions are. And so that could be to each other, right? And so when we notice that, we can notice like what is triggering or what are our interpretations about someone, and then begin to maybe challenge what some of those are and lean into compassion and validation and understanding versus that feeling of like being opponents, right? Because you see a lot of like bickering and argument, and this is your fault and this is your fault, and it's like, where can we find like just the kernel of truth and on each side, and start with compassion, leaning in there. And I think that is the first step. Well, besides the self-recognition of what is my internal experience first.
Yeah. I'm sure in the couple work that you do, Jasymnn, it takes a little bit of work to establish the relationship as a unit instead of one partner versus the other. How has that looked across the board?
Yeah, I think I try to get people to see, first of all, like their overarching goal together, and move them from each side of the boxing ring. I always say, like, y'all are like opponents on opposite ends of the boxing ring. Like when, for example, I have a couple, this happens often where they will share something and I'm trying to get them to listen in order to validate. And when I say, okay, what did you just hear? They go right into explanation or what their interpretation was. Like, well, I just think it's funny that, or I find it ironic that, and I'm like, hold on, that's not what I asked you. First, What did you hear? What was said? And so it's like slowing people down to understand the process of joining together versus defending oneself. I see that a lot with couples. It's like you're just operating as opponents, and you're finding the other person to be problematic instead of looking at the problem as the problem. So that's an ongoing work in progress to help them to look at the issue together as a team versus me against you.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and it kind of leads into the next question. What types of issues do you see specifically like Black men struggling with?
Yeah, I can attest to this too in my own relationship. I'm married, and one is expression of emotion, and two is like the perception that's held about how to do that, or if that's okay, or just, the idea of expressing in general. And if my husband was here, he would say, I always tell him, like, you make general statements, like stop generalizing. But his generalization is that it's unsafe to express his opinion. And he'll, say for Black men. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense, because sometimes even I'll like jump on and I'm like, okay, I'm doing the very thing that he says, like he doesn't like, for it to be done to him. And so, I'm very sometimes quick to try and correct or offer a different way of seeing things. And I think sometimes you just need to zip it and like let them express. And so that kind of goes into the reasons why it's difficult, but also I think because of just societally, like how masculinity is viewed, especially in Black men, and like what's acceptable to express, what should you be holding in, and why, what makes you more of a man and less of a man, like that whole debacle. So I think that is what I would say, like personally and professionally, what I've seen is a struggle.
I see you, Stevie, in the amen corner, man. Did you want to add to this?
I mean, nothing necessarily, but I think sometimes silence is golden, literally, because for men to actually feel vulnerable and feel safe, sometimes they don't want a suggestion or to be corrected or help with verbalization of your words. We don't need that sometimes. Sometimes we just need to sit down and just hear me. Just hear me. Don't say anything else. Just hear me. And I think sometimes that can just be just as validating for a man, for a Black man, to just have that feeling, to feel safe with their partner.
Yeah. It's
Did I
like the
touch?
very thing that like women ask for a lot of the time too, is like, I just want to be heard, right? But it's oftentimes, I think, difficult for them to do that, for them to offer that space. So it's kind of interesting. I think sometimes women can be a little impulsive in that way of like, you know, jumping into that space where we could hold and not say anything. And that goes back to like self-control, self-reflection, like, you know, just rest, just hold on.
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes it could be like a little bit of that nurturing, that natural nurturing that comes from a woman, of just wanting to help and wanting to just be there in the best way she knows how.
Yeah.
And that comes natural. And sometimes that's just not always the fix. That's not always the key. And I think as a man, as a Black man, they should be able to express that to their partner, their spouse. Like, you know, that's not always what I need. It's good for our kid or our children, but it's right now, that's not what I need. And I think that's where Black men sometimes run into the struggle of expressing like what they really need from their spouse, especially when they're having like difficult times or going through something.
Yeah.
I definitely remember Alicia speaking to that in the discussion about feeling the kind of nurturing instinct and having to battle with that. Am I getting that right? Was I listening?
You were listening. Look at you, husband.
Yeah. So in your practice, Jasmine, what are some of the methods that you use that are effective in kind of fostering this safe space for Black men?
Yeah. I would say first off, like, just it always starts with like checking in with oneself. Like, I encourage them to like challenge any notions that don't fit their goals. And so by that, I mean, like, what are some of the narratives that maybe they've internalized and that don't fit, you know, how they want to show up. So doing a little bit of that work, and then also just practicing some practical ways to express, like, I don't have a lot of Black men in my practice, but when I do, you know, sometimes it's as fundamental as like working on I statements, you know, like a very basic formula for sharing how you feel. And then sometimes it's doing a little bit of work on emotional trauma, like what were your experiences coming up with like emotional expression, whether it was observed or your own experience, right? And so sometimes digging into that, unpacking what that looks like, and sort of rewriting a narrative that fits where they want to go, you know, now presently, based on how they've grown and, you know, just evolved as a person.
That's great. That's great. Now, I could ask the same question to any of the other counselors, therapists in this session. Steve, how are you building rapport with your clients, the Black males specifically?
I'm on mute. Dang. Oh, so right now it's funny. I'm not actually seeing clients, but
when you did,
so yeah. I have one that I'm probably gonna be referring to Jasmine. We'll talk later. But when I was seeing clients, I think building rapport was just me being vulnerable myself, just being not a complete open book, but just kind of let them know like my style, who I am, where I'm from, kind of like what, and I'm so like person-centered. I want to get to know them, like, you know, really get to know them, so that way they'll feel comfortable expressing any type of, you know, issue. I don't want to like have to always dig for information. So like if we check in, they'll hit me straight off, like, this is what I've been dealing with this week, or this is what I've been going through this week. So My main focus has always been like person-centered type of therapy, to just make them feel comfortable. I've never done couples, I must admit. I've always kind of veered away. I just never thought it was for me to do couples, just to be in the same room hearing two people bicker. But I've done a lot of family, so it's similar.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of family.
I feel even more challenged with family because there's more people in the room. You got just more happening. So if you were seeing families, I'd be like, see this family, because I couples are my jam, but more than two, I'm like, oof, this is
Yeah, especially when you're having like the parents are having a different dynamic because of their kids' behavior, and their parenting styles are different based on the way they grew up. And then they don't know how to discipline their child, and they're going through this, and then they got to abide by the law. And that's another thing. Can't be out here whooping your kids anymore. So it's always that battle. But I mean, in the end, I would always, try to find common ground between all parties, so everybody's getting along. So yeah, families was fun, very fun.
Absolutely. That's Dot. What's your experience been, my friend?
Bro, I've done a combination of family therapy, some couples, and individual therapy. So as of late in my individual sessions, I'm always doing client-based as well, similar to Stevie. And usually I implement goals as a grounding and foundation to build rapport. Obviously, you have some of the symptoms and the challenges that you're trying to progress through, but outside of whatever depression or anxiety that you may be feeling, what are your personal goals? So whatever their goals are, their aspirations, that's usually the baseline for our conversations. And I always try to implement self-care and what feeds them to keep them active in a positive space.
Yeah, no, that's right on, sir. Thank you for doing that. Thank you all for doing that work. Because I don't know if I could do that. Actually, I do know. I cannot, and that's why you're doing it.
You can do it, Jay.
Yes, you can. You absolutely can, and you have.
You
So-
probably do it informally and don't even realize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just need a informed consent paper, and you good, bro.
Right. Right.
That's
Yeah.
it.
I mean, in the studio environment, I mean, Haskell can speak to this. I mean, it's all about building rapport, and the ways in which we build rapport are very similar. It's always person focused, and a lot of times people have never experienced someone actually focused on them or asking them about them for any extended period of time, and so definitely I've found that creates some immediate rapport and feeling of safety to be vulnerable, which is what singing and rapping and putting musical ideas together is really all about. You sharing what's in your head. So you got to be in a comfortable space. But going back to the topic, Jasmine, I was interested in hearing from you. What are some of the common misconceptions that you think deter Black women from providing safe spaces?
Yeah, I think it starts with like how we've been conditioned to view Black men. Sometimes, like I touched on, like that idea of what masculinity looks like.
Yeah.
Because you'll sometimes hear some women say like, oh, that's weak, or you're being weak if, I don't know, their tears or expression of hurt, certain more vulnerable emotions like that. And so I think the misconception is that expressiveness it equates to weakness or lack of strength. And so that's something that, when I spoke to the idea of rewriting a narrative, is like changing that construct, right, of how you see emotional expression, or just talking about, difficulties or challenges, things like that. So I think that, sometimes it comes from what mom and grandmama taught you about what, a relationship between man and woman should look like, and what a man should be doing and these things. And so sometimes that can be rooted in some traumatic experiences. And so that, they're kind of like these blanket or general ideas that I think can be challenged because they are misconceptions a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, I want to go off the script for a second, and I'm going to play some audio. And I love for everyone's feedback on this audio. It's a clip from I want to say Ayala.
Iyanla.
Yes. And
Iyanla Van Sant.
yes. And so she's having a conversation with a young woman, and she's telling her about the importance of her words toward another Black man. And this dynamic is specifically between a mother and a son. Mm-hmm. And so let's take a listen to this, and then I love feedback from the entire group. Here we go.
This is why in our culture as Black people, when the boys turn a certain age, the men come and get him and take him away from the mother because she can emotionally manipulate him. But since we don't live in our culture no more, we say what we want to say, do what we want to say. We tear our men down and then wonder why they don't make good husbands and fathers. Mothers destroy sons. His mother can speak to him in certain ways that destroy him in ways that can never be repaired.
She speaks with so much conviction.
I know. I was like, what church is she a pastor at?
Yo, the Church of that's Ayanla Baptist right there.
Yeah. Is there an appeal? What must I do?
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought this clip was so interesting because the caption was simply, women can tear down and destroy men with their words. And it's so interesting because we talk about, relationships and like marital relationships, but we haven't really talked about the upbringing. We hinted to it, but we really haven't dove into it. And I think because, this is the perfect time to really talk about it because you're raising a son right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to hear from you and the other sons in the chat in the group. If this resonates with you or not, and is there any nugget of truth in this or not?
I think that there is some nugget of truth. I felt like I didn't agree 100% as I was listening to it. I think that there's definitely a contribution from mom and dad. So I'm like, I was a DBT therapist, and it's all about like not being on extremes or like on the absolute. So I'm always like, where's the middle path here? So I do think that both sides are influential. But as Stevie had mentioned earlier about that nurturing aspect, I was thinking like, as a mom, that being one of the stronger parts of us, that having such a great influence on the child, on the male child. And so it's really important, our word choice, even since they're little, like when we teach them about crying versus not crying, and I think because I'm a therapist, I'm a lot more cognizant of my language, because I'm just aware of my language almost all the time because it's been such a practice. And like, for example, I'll be at a family's house and Zion will fall or whatever, and someone will immediately say, "You're okay, get up. You're a big boy," like that. And I'm like, I don't use that language because yeah, he's a big boy, but he can still hurt, whether it's from something physical that harmed him or something that was emotionally harmful or challenging or sad, right? And so I do think that is very powerful. There's always messaging that's being communicated through our nonverbal actions and through what we say. And so, yeah, again, that's just something I'm really aware of. I'm sure I'm not perfect, but I do try and pay attention and be aware of my role in that, because my goal is to raise a strong boy who is aware of and comfortable with his emotional expression. And so I think what I do try, it flows from that. At least I try.
Who else would like to jump in next that we haven't heard from, perhaps? Haskell, Alicia, Shondan, any one of you?
Okay, I'll chime in. Really, Haskell? You gonna volunteer me? I should have said Haskell. You ain't right. No, that audio was, she definitely speaks with a lot of conviction, for sure. I'm like you, Jasmine. I couldn't 100% agree with what she was saying, because it does come from both sides. I wouldn't put all the blame on a mom as far as, them, tearing down a little boy and creating, for lack of better words, these monsters that go out into society. Like she made it sound very extreme. So I cannot agree with it. I definitely think that it comes from both parents, but also just, your social circle. I mean, we send kids off to school. We don't know how they're being talked to at school by, teachers and other peers. So, those are things to consider as well. Yeah, that's all I got. But that was some very, very interesting audio for sure.
No, that sounds like the way I'm raising my daughter. That's strong. I think I'm raising her a little too strong. I gotta tone it down a bit. Yeah, I
You're gonna be up next with the reality show.
Yeah, man, I gotta tone it down as a dad, because I feel like I'm putting her on that path. You strong. You gonna get up.
I remember seeing that clip, the actual video clip, and it was a mother and her son in this counseling situation with the Ayanla, and the mother was pretty overbearing, and so she made it a point to let her know, like, this is why this man is closing up. This is why he's doing what he's doing. So I remember that clip. But yeah, I think for men, it's hard to take instruction anyway when you're trying to be a strong man and a strong leader. So that ego has to be checked at the door. And when you don't check that ego at the door as a man, it's hard to receive words when people have passion. Like, and I think even for me, I was raised with a strong, very strong grandmother that when she spoke, you listened. So when I was, started getting out into society and when people would talk with that passion, it didn't really bother me much unless they directed that anger directly at me, and then something would rise up in me. But it's very important for people to acknowledge each other. Like, I think Stevie hit it on the head when he said earlier, sometimes, not saying nothing and just listening can do a whole lot. Because typically you can answer your own questions. You just want to speak them out. It's going to get your feelings out, you know. But you know, it's this is a very interesting topic. It's very important though, especially for young boys. I mean, I used to beat up furniture for kids. If they fell down and hit something, I'd say, "Come over here. Who did that?" Like I hit my head, and I would beat the furniture up. Don't do that again. Like, you know, opposed to even like you said earlier, Jasmine, I did all those things. Get up, boy. You know, you stand up. You know, you strong. I'm guilty. I did all that. Let's go beat up the furniture. You know. So,
And
but I
like
understand. I get it.
yeah, my upbringing, like part of me, you know, it's hard to untangle everything about our upbringing. I mean, I grew up watching that too. And part of me is like, that's okay sometimes, you know, it's sometimes encouraging, but I think there's a time and a place for everything. So I think that like having just an awareness of like balance, because sometimes people can be overly, you know, I mean, I think people heart is in a good place when they're doing that, is, you know, trying to encourage and, you know, don't you get knocked down, you don't stay there, you get up, right? So it's encouraging, and it can be overly, or not overly, but it can be invalidating sometimes when it's like, I'm tired of, you know, that hurt. And so like for someone to say like, yeah, that hurt, like that's very powerful too. So yeah, I think it's about balance.
How did you feel about the clip, Sean Don?
I don't know, man. I got mixed feelings about it. I don't want to. It's very situational.
Right.
I think what she's saying about how a mother's words can destroy a boy, and I feel like, depending on the situation, it can. If this is just a single mom, there's no dad, there's no father figure, like it can, those words with the wrong tone, the wrong language can, I don't want to say destroy, but it can put them on a dangerous path, a very dangerous path. Violent, like depressed, empty, worthless. Like, I mean, because that's all you have at that point. You know, is your mother's words. That's it. So I'm like, you can do some damage. You can at least 50%. We all come from a man and a woman, but you just spoke to that 50% of me. Now I'm on 50 because I have no other voice, you know, pushing me to say, hey, I'm actually, there's more to me than this. My bad. You about to say something?
Oh. Who was about to say something?
Oh, I thought you were about to say something, Jay.
Oh, no, man.
Just a glitch.
Just a
glitch in the matrix.
So there's that. I don't disagree, but I don't undermine how powerful a woman's like voice and words are. I don't undermine it at all.
Yeah, especially the woman that gave you life, like, and that's like in charge of your, you know, upbringing and safety. I definitely want to hear from you too, S. Dot, how you felt about this audio clip.
There was a lot in the clip. I think there are two things that stood out for me in the audio. One thing that Iyanla kind of spoke to was how the voice from a woman can be weaponized. So I do think that is something that we all can be should be aware of, the strength and the power that can come from a Black woman's voice. For better and for worse. That's something we all need to be aware of. And for our women in relationships, that's something to definitely be mindful of. We can passively or passively aggressively weaponize our voice and our feedback in ways that could trigger our children and our partners. And that very sentiment stands for men as well. It's not just the women, but one of the things that stood out in Iyanla's voice was the reality of some of the conditioning that some of our parents in relationships have had in the past. You know, the tough love approach, it can be, it's way too common, but I think that's something that we all can work on. I've read this book called Post-Traumatic Slave Stress Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy. And she speaks about the post-traumatic slave conditioning that's been passed from generation to generation in Black families. And there's a lot of ways how when we experience trauma, like Haskell was saying, when a kid falls down on the ground, we're so quick to be like, get up, you're tough, you're strong, without creating space for them to own the feelings that they have. And some of that is from our conditioning. And that's stuff that we have to unlearn because, you know, yes, in the 1800s and in slavery days, we had to have that hard and tough exterior to survive and help our families thrive in spaces and environments of adversity. But now we got to create the space to kind of unlearn some of those habits because it doesn't serve us in public to do that. We should be able to have conversations with our kids, with our children, and our relationships to get some grounding and some mindfulness, but also like that nurturing that we all need.
I totally agree, man. Totally agree with you. For me, when I heard this, I always think about, you know, we're talking about relationships. The very first relationship that you have with a woman is with, you know, your mother or your, you know, your guardian, if it happens to be a woman. And so the dynamics of that are very powerful and do set the tone for every relationship that you'll ever have. And so for me, I think about my relationship with my own mother. And I shared this story a few times, but my mom had this thing called, whenever I was about to get a whooping, my mom had this thing called hug and kiss and talk time.
Ooh.
And so before I would get whooped, we had an opportunity to talk about what it is that I was doing, where she saw that the reason why I needed to be disciplined. And before we even did that, we hugged and we kissed.
And she still whooped you?
And occasionally, and this is very occasionally, like maybe twice out of the hundreds of whoopings, I was able to argue my point and actually avoid the whooping. Most of the time, it was because I was funny. And I was able to joke my way out. One time she asked me to get a belt after the hug and kiss and talk time, and I brought the like super tiny cotton robe belt that you put on your nightgown. Like, I brought that belt, and she was like, "All right, this is hilarious. I'm not gonna whoop you." So, but
That was great. That was great.
What she created was an environment and an expectation that whenever there was a disagreement or a miscommunication, I would always be able to sit down and talk and actually have some discourse, which has served me in all of my relationships thus far. And, you know, I don't get whooped too much by Alicia. So, you know,
Not anymore.
Yeah, it's working out pretty well.
That's good. Love
But
it.
yeah,
I didn't whoop him.
That's great. I don't think I would be able to follow through with the whooping after the safe space. I'd be like, I just feel too guilty. But that's wonderful that you had that. Because I remember for me growing up, the whooping, there was just the punishment, right? There wasn't that like teachable moment. And I think that's when discipline is most harmful, is when there's not that space to talk. And I, like, on the flip side, opposite of you, Jay, I noticed where that has impacted me in my relationships, you know, just from like not speaking up for myself, or feeling guilty for expressing needs. And so that relationship, as you mentioned, is so powerful. And I wanted to also even say that, like, in utero, that's where everything starts, right? Like science is even showing us that, like, the relationship that our mother had to us when we were in the womb, and like her stress and anxiety, like all of that even impacts. And so it's just so interesting if you can even like learn what that looked like, how you can track, you know, how that sort of transpired later on in someone's life.
yeah, absolutely. So, man, as expected, the time flew by. One last question and also final thought. What are some ways that we can continue to work to validate the Black men and women in our community at large?
I think compassion. I was just talking about this with a couple today, like they're at odds, like extreme odds, and trying to get them to have compassion for each other, rather than, you know, focusing on all of the differences and difficulties and replaying the traumatic experiences that they've had in their own life and together. Just focusing more on the gratitude and the compassion and the empathy. That doesn't mean that we don't problem solve or we don't highlight what needs fixing. But we shift our focus some. And so if we can do that, then we can find the words, I think, more to express validation and just hold that space for each other. And I would also say there's some element too of like recognizing how much we need grace ourselves. And then it's also, I think it's easier to extend. So whenever I'm having a hard time, like giving grace to someone else, namely my husband, I think about how much I've needed him to have grace for me. And so I think, again, it's kind of starts with the self and like checking in and just reminding yourself, like, I need compassion, I need grace, like I need validation. Let me extend that.
That's it.
Well said. We have a few comments in the chat. We got Natasha Townsend. She said it was a great conversation. She loved the point on asking about upbringing and learned communication and expression techniques. We also have a comment from Damon Walker. It's crazy. It's crazy. He said, I just had a convo about expectations for a woman to be safe as a man. And I responded saying that, are you looking for a man or a machine? And if it's not perfect, their word will kill the man. So sounds like Damon was on the side of Ayanla, and those words being very, very harmful. But like Jasmine just said, it's all about offering that compassion and showing grace. That's how we can move together relationally, as in our, you know, couples relationships and as a community.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Before we close, two things. Jasmine, you got to do some shout outs if you have any shout outs. And then for a bonus round, is there any song in particular that you listen to kind of keep you encouraged, or to help you know, build yourself up? If there's any song that comes to mind, we would love for you to share it.
Yeah. Okay. First shout out to my husband. He's not watching, he's with our son. But my number one teammate, partner in crime, all of that good stuff. I'll have him watch this recording and he's gonna tell me how he thinks I
Oh,
did too.
shout out to your husband.
But I think
Respect.
this conversation is just on par with like the conversations that we have too. So I think I definitely want to share this with him. And a song that encourages me, when I'm having challenges, there's this song, this gospel song. It's called Every Moment in Your Hands. It's by, I think, Forever Jones is the artist. I remember when I was swimming in the ocean several years ago, preparing for a triathlon, I would say that song in my head. When I was in labor, I had that song on my playlist. It just helps me to think about God's sovereignty, and like all these moments are just, in your hands. Like I can do what I can do and everything in your hands. So that's something that I'm encouraged by. I remember you asked this question on the last podcast, so I was going to give a different response. I was going to say, because of our most recent conversation about moms, Dear Mama by Tupac, I was like, that would be a good one. Because I was like, just thinking about the, conversation about like the mom and the impact on the son, that first relationship. So that was going to be my first response, but then you gave me a different prompt. So
I got to switch it up on you. I got to keep you on your feet.
You definitely did. You definitely did.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Jasmine, for giving us your time and sharing your wisdom. We thank you for all of the work that you do. And we're just so grateful that you could be here with us today. And, you are a part of the Music for Your Mental family.
Thank you.
And so we appreciate you. If anyone else have any final thoughts, Haskell CEO, you want to?
Yeah, we thank you for your words and for your perspective, and from how you brought it from a wifely perspective, a mother, a businesswoman, a Black woman. I mean, you brought so many different perspectives, all embodied in one. And so I'm sure that whoever listens to this is going to get a lot from it. So, I mean, we're packed in with the therapist tonight. Like, y'all team up here. I'm just fixing folk.
Right. Team mental health. No, thank you guys for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. It was very rich and fruitful.
Likewise.
Awesome.
Likewise.
On that note, we're going to ride out on this amazing song.
Forever Jones.